Welcome back. The doors to the library are open once again, ready to guide you through the forgotten history and deep lore that lies waiting in the dark. Before we begin tonight's journey, let us take a moment to quiet the mind. The day has been long, filled with noise and demands. But here, in the safety of the dark, none of that matters. Find a position that allows your body to dissolve into the mattress. Let your hands rest by your sides, palms open, releasing the tension you have carried in your fingers. Unclench your jaw. Let your tongue rest gently on the roof of your mouth. Take a deep breath in through your nose, feeling the cool air fill your lungs. Hold it for a heartbeat and let it out slowly, imagining the stress leaving your body like a gray mist. Tonight, we are traveling to a place of absolute silence. We are leaving the chaotic cities of Earth and the red deserts of Vegeta. We are ascending to the 10th universe, to the sacred world of the Kais. This is the story of Zamasu. It is not a story of a monster, at least not in the beginning. It is a story of a perfectionist. It is the tragedy of a being who loved the universe so much that he wanted to strangle it to save it. It is a tale of tea, of silence, and of a divine heart that slowly, quietly turned to ice. So, close your eyes. Imagine a sky that is a soft, pale yellow, stretching out into infinity. Imagine a world where the grass is a manicured green, soft as velvet, and the only sound is the gentle rustling of the sacred trees. We begin in the garden. The sacred world of the Kais in Universe 10 was a place of breathtaking stillness. It was a realm detached from the flow of mortal time, a sanctuary where the gods observed the cosmos from a distance. There were no seasons here, only an eternal pleasant spring. The light was diffuse and gentle, casting no harsh shadows. In the center of this world stood a modest temple, built of white stone and dark wood. And on the veranda of this temple, a tea ceremony was taking place. Zamasu knelt on the wooden floor. His posture was impeccable. His back was straight, his shoulders relaxed. He wore the gray and purple robes of a Kai in training, the fabric stiff and clean. His skin was green, smooth and unblemished. His white hair was styled in a mohawk that defied the wind, perfect in its symmetry. He held a teapot in his hands. It was made of clear glass, allowing him to see the leaves dancing in the hot water. For Zamasu, tea was not just a drink. It was a philosophy. It was a microcosm of the universe. If the water was too hot, the leaves would burn and the tea would be bitter. If the water was too cold, the flavor would not release and the tea would be weak. It required balance. It required patience. It required a purity of intent. He poured the tea into a small ceramic cup. The stream of amber liquid was steady, making a soft, musical sound as it filled the vessel. He stopped exactly 3 millimeters from the rim. He placed the cup on a wooden tray and slid it across the floor to his master. Gowasu sat opposite him. He was an ancient Kai, his skin wrinkled and yellowed by eons of existence. He wore the green earrings of a supreme Kai, and on his finger he wore the time ring, a silver band that held the power to traverse history. Gowasu picked up the cup. He took a sip. He closed his eyes, savoring the warmth. "Delicious," Gowasu murmured, his voice raspy and kind. "Your heart is calm today, Zamasu. I can taste it in the tea. It is clear, unclouded." Zamasu bowed his head. "Thank you, Gowasu-sama. I strive for clarity." "Clarity is good," the old master nodded. "But do not mistake clarity for rigidity. The tea leaves swirl, Zamasu. They move. They are chaotic in the water, yet they produce harmony. The universe is the same." Zamasu did not answer immediately. He looked out at the garden. He saw the petals of a pink flower drifting to the ground. He saw a butterfly landing on a rock. It was beautiful. It was orderly. "The universe should be like this garden," Zamasu said softly. "Manicured, peaceful. But it is not." Gowasu sighed, placing the cup down. He knew where this conversation was going. They had had it 1,000 times. "We are the Kais, Zamasu. We are the creators. We are the observers. We provide the seeds of life, and we watch them grow. But we do not control how they grow. We must trust in the mortals." "Trust?" Zamasu looked up, his grey eyes narrowing slightly. "We give them intellect. We give them resources. We give them beautiful worlds. And what do? They squander it. They fight. They destroy. They pollute. They are weeds, Master. If a gardener sees a weed choking the flowers, does he trust it to stop, or does he pull it out?" "We are not gardeners," Gowasu corrected gently. "We are parents. A parent does not kill a child for making a mistake. A parent guides. A parent watches." Zamasu fell silent. He poured himself a cup of tea. He looked at his reflection in the liquid. It was a perfect reflection, but deep down, a crack was forming. He could not understand his master's passivity. He looked at the time rings sitting in their box on the table. 4 green rings for alternate timelines and 1 silver ring for the main timeline. They were powerful artifacts, forbidden to use for anything other than observation. To Zamasu, they were wasted on mere observation. They were tools of correction that were gathering dust. "Let us observe then," Gowasu said, sensing his students' unrest. "Let us look at the barbarians on the planet Barbari." Gowasu summoned a crystal sphere. It floated between them, the surface swirling with mist before clearing to reveal a scene from the mortal realm below. Planet Barbari was a harsh, rocky world. The sky was a bruised purple. The creatures that lived there were large, dinosaur-like humanoids. They were primitive, violent. Zamasu watched the image. He saw 2 of the creatures fighting over a piece of meat. They roared, swiping at each other with massive claws. Blood splattered on the dry ground. One of the creatures picked up a rock and smashed the skull of the other. The victor howled, raising the meat in triumph. Zamasu felt a physical wave of revulsion. It wasn't fear, it was disgust. It was the feeling of seeing mud splattered on a white silk sheet. It was an offense to the senses. "They are beasts," Zamasu whispered. "They do not learn. We have watched them for 1,000 years, and they are still hitting each other with rocks." They are evolving, Gowasu said, ever the optimist. It takes time. Perhaps in another 1,000 years they will build cities. They will create art. Or perhaps they will just build bigger rocks, Zamasu countered. Why do we protect them? What is the value of their existence? If I were to descend there and remove them, the universe would be quieter, cleaner. The resources of that planet could be used for something beautiful. Zamasu, Gowasu said, his voice sharpening. That is the thinking of a god of destruction, not a Kai. Our role is creation, balance. If you cannot accept the flaws of mortals, you can never truly love the universe. I love the universe, Zamasu said, his voice tight. That is why I hate to see it tarnished. He stood up. He walked to the edge of the veranda. He looked out at the infinite yellow sky. He felt a profound loneliness. He felt that he was the only one who truly cared about the sanctity of existence. The other gods, even his master, seemed content to sit in their ivory towers and watch the cosmos rot from the inside out. He wanted order. He wanted perfection. Was that so wrong? The days passed in silence. Zamasu brewed tea. He swept the temple floors. He trimmed the sacred trees. But his mind was elsewhere. He was brooding. The seed of his plan had not yet sprouted, but the soil was being tilled. And then the intruder arrived. It was a day like any other. The air was still. The tea was hot. Zamasu was pouring a cup for Gowasu when a disturbance rippled through the dimension. It wasn't a ship. It was a sudden, violent displacement of air, a sound like a thunderclap in a library. Zamasu looked up, startled. He felt an energy signature unlike anything he had ever felt before. It was wild, hot, unrefined. It felt like a fire raging out of control. A figure appeared on the grass of the garden. It was a mortal, a Saiyan. He wore an orange and blue martial arts uniform that looked garish against the subtle tones of the Kai world. His black hair defied gravity in spikes that looked chaotic compared to Zamasu's neat style. He was looking around, scratching his head, a wide, foolish grin on his face. "Wow!" the mortal shouted. His voice was loud, shattering the tranquility of the garden. "So, this is Universe 10? It looks just like ours." Behind him appeared two other figures. One was the god of destruction, Beerus, a purple cat-like being of immense, terrifying pressure. The other was his attendant, the angel Whis. Zamasu froze. A mortal? Standing on the sacred grass? In the presence of the Supreme Kai? "Who are you?" Zamasu demanded, stepping forward. "How dare a mortal set foot in this sanctuary?" The Saiyan looked at him and waved. "Yo, I'm Goku. I'm a Saiyan from Earth. We came to check something out." Gowasu stood up, bowing respectfully to Beerus. "Lord Beerus, to what do we owe this honor?" Beerus yawned, scratching his ear. "Just a little investigation. We're looking for someone with a specific energy signature. And this mortal here wanted to spar." "Spar?" Zamasu repeated the word as if it were an obscenity. You brought a mortal here. To fight? Yeah. Goku stepped forward, bouncing on the balls of his feet. He looked at Zamasu with eager eyes. You look strong. I can feel your ki. It's really calm, but it's sharp. Wanna go a few rounds? Zamasu felt a vain throb in his forehead. The insolence, the sheer audacity. A mortal challenging a god to a brawl in the middle of a holy site. I do not fight mortals, Zamasu said coldly. I do not lower myself. Oh, come on, Goku pleaded. Just a little bit. I promise I won't hurt you. That was the breaking point. The idea that this human-shaped weed thought he could hurt a Kai. Zamasu looked at Gowasu. Humor him, Zamasu, Gowasu said. It is part of their training, and perhaps it will teach you something about mortals. Very well, Zamasu whispered. He stepped down from the veranda onto the grass. He assumed a fighting stance. His style was elegant, precise. He formed a blade of purple energy around his hand, his signature technique. It was a weapon of divine judgment. Goku grinned. He didn't even transform. He stayed in his base form. The fight was short. Zamasu moved with the speed of a god. He struck with intent to disable, to punish. He swung his energy blade, carving through the air. But Goku was faster. The Saiyan moved like water. He dodged Zamasu's strikes with a casual, almost insulting ease. He weaved. He ducked. Zamasu felt panic rising in his chest. He was a prodigy among Kais. He was a genius of combat. How was this mortal keeping up with him? You're good, Goku laughed. But you overthink it. Goku vanished. He reappeared behind Zamasu. Zamasu spun around, striking out, but he hit nothing but air. Goku swept his leg. Zamasu fell. He hit the grass hard, staining his pristine robes. He scrambled up, humiliated, rage boiling in his veins. He charged again. Goku caught his fist. Zamasu gasped. He looked at his hand, trapped in the grip of the mortal. He tried to pull away, but Goku's grip was like iron. He looked into Goku's eyes. He didn't see malice. He didn't see evil. He saw pure, raw power. He saw a being who had surpassed the limits that gods had set for mortals. It was terrifying. That's enough, Gowasu called out. Goku released him immediately. He stepped back and bowed. Thanks, that was fun. You're really strong, Zamasu. Zamasu stood there, panting. His hand throbbed where Goku had held it. He felt the lingering residue of Goku's ki. It was disgusting, and yet it was undeniably powerful. I must go prepare more tea, Zamasu said, his voice trembling. He turned his back on them. He walked back into the temple. He went to the kitchen. He stood over the sink, washing his hands. He scrubbed them. He scrubbed the spot where the Saiyan had touched him. He washed until his skin was raw, but he could still feel it, the contamination. A mortal who rivaled the gods, a mortal who could enter the sacred world and knock a Kai to the ground. It was a mistake. It was a glitch in the system. Zamasu looked out the window. He saw Goku laughing with Beerus and Whis. He saw the Saiyan patting Gowasu on the back. The garden didn't look peaceful anymore. It looked vulnerable. The walls of the sanctuary had been breached. "They are dangerous," Zamasu whispered to the empty room. "They are not just weeds. They are a virus, and if left unchecked, they will consume everything." He prepared a new pot of tea. He watched the leaves swirl in the hot water. They spun violently, chaotic and dark. When he poured the cup for Gowasu later that evening, after the guests had left, the liquid was not clear. It was dark. It was bitter. "The tea is different tonight," Gowasu noted, taking a sip. "It tastes troubled." "I am merely reflecting on the lesson you taught me, Master," Zamasu said, his face a mask of stone. "I am learning about mortals." "And what have you learned?" Zamasu looked at the time ring on Gowasu's finger. He looked at the silver band that gleamed in the twilight. "I have learned," Zamasu said softly, "that they are a mistake." He didn't say the rest out loud. He didn't need to. The thought was screaming in his mind, louder than any roar of a barbarian. And mistakes must be corrected. Zamasu retreated to his quarters. He sat on his meditation mat, but he did not meditate. He replayed the fight in his mind. He saw Goku's face. He felt the humiliation. But more than that, he felt a sense of divine duty. If the other gods were too lazy, too blind, or too weak to do what was necessary, then he would have to do it himself. He was alone in the universe, the only sane man in an asylum of apathy. He looked at his hands. They were the hands of a creator. But as he clenched them into fists, he realized they could also be the hands of a destroyer. He closed his eyes, and for the first time in his life, he didn't pray for peace. He planned for justice. The context was set. The catalyst had arrived. The tea had gone cold. And in the silence of the 10th universe, a nightmare began to wake up. Zamasu is no longer just pouring tea. He is brewing a revolution. We find him in the archives of the Kaioshin realm. It is a vast, dimly lit room filled with scrolls and floating crystals containing the history of the cosmos. The air here smells of old parchment and dry ink. Zamasu sat alone at a wooden table. In front of him hovered a viewing crystal, a screen connecting him to the stream of universal information known as godhood. The light from the screen painted his green face in flickering hues of blue and gold. He was watching a recording. It was a replay of the Tournament of Destroyers, a contest held between Universe 6 and Universe 7. He watched Goku. He watched the Saiyan who had humiliated him in the garden. On the screen, Goku was fighting a legendary assassin named Hit. Zamasu watched Goku's body change. He watched the black hair turn blue. He watched the aura explode. Not the wild yellow aura of a mortal, but a calm blue flame. God Ki. Zamasu's eyes narrowed. He leaned closer, his fingers gripping the edge of the table until the wood groaned. "Divine energy," Zamasu whispered to the empty library. "A mortal wielding the power of the gods." It was a blasphemy. It was as if a dog had walked into a cathedral and sat upon the throne. Mortals were meant to be weak. They were meant to be dependent. By attaining this form, this Super Saiyan Blue, Goku had blurred the line between the divine and the profane. If a mortal could rival a god, then what was the purpose of a god? Zamasu rewound the image. He played it again. The blue light reflected in his cold, grey eyes. He felt a mixture of awe and revulsion. He saw the potential of that body. A body that could hold divine power, yet possessed the infinite growth of a Saiyan. An idea began to form. It was a small, dark seed, planted in the fertile soil of his resentment. He needed to know more. He needed to know everything. He stood up, his robes rustling in the quiet library. He left the sacred world of the Kais. He did not tell Gowasu where he was going. He traveled alone, moving through the fabric of space with the silent grace of a shadow. He traveled to the planet of Tsuno. Tsuno was an oracle, a being who knew everything in the multiverse. His palace was located on a small planetoid surrounded by a traditional Japanese garden. It was raining when Zamasu arrived. The rain in this part of the universe was cold. It fell in heavy vertical sheets, drumming against the stone pathways and the wooden roof of Tsuno's shrine. The sound was rhythmic, hypnotic, tap, tap, tap. Zamasu walked through the rain. He did not shield himself. The water ran down his face, dripping from his nose and chin, but he did not blink. He looked like a ghost haunting the rain. He entered the audience chamber. Tsuno, a large, rounded being with a perpetually bored expression, sat upon a cushion. "A Kai," Tsuno noted, his voice echoing in the chamber. "You are far from home." "I seek knowledge," Zamasu said. He did not bow. He did not offer gifts. He stood tall, radiating a cold, sharp pressure. "I require an offering," Zamasu said, "but I have brought none. My offering is that I will allow you to continue your existence if you answer me." The attendants trembled. Tsuno paused. He felt the intent radiating from the Kai. It was a killing intent, sharp as a razor. "Ask," Tsuno said simply. "Tell me about the Super Dragon Balls," Zamasu demanded. "And tell me about the mortal named Son Goku." For the next hour, Zamasu listened. He stood in the dim light of the shrine, the rain pounding on the roof outside, absorbing the information. He learned of the Super Dragon Balls, orbs the size of planets, created by the dragon god Zalama. He learned that they could grant any wish without limitation, even a wish that defied the natural order. He learned that they were currently scattered between Universe 6 and Universe 7. He learned of Goku's history, his battles, his mercy, his ignorance. When Zamasu left Tsuno's palace, the rain had stopped. The air was damp and cold. He walked back to his ship, his mind racing. The pieces of the puzzle were falling into place. He had the motive. He had the method. Now, he just needed the resolve. He returned to the sacred world of the Kais. It was evening. The sky was a deep, bruised purple, transitioning into night. The lanterns in the temple were lit, casting a warm orange glow against the white walls. Gowasu was sitting at the low table, watching the GodTube monitor. He was watching a replay of a pop idol concert from a mortal planet. He chuckled, tapping his foot to the music. "Zamasu?" Gowasu said, smiling as his student entered. "You missed dinner. Where have you been?" "Thinking, master," Zamasu said. "Just thinking." He walked to the kitchen. He began to prepare the tea. The ritual was the same. The water, the leaves, the heat. But Zamasu's movements were different tonight. They were mechanical. There was no love in the preparation. There was only efficiency. He placed the cup on the tray. He looked at his own reflection in the amber liquid. He looked tired. He looked determined. He walked out to the veranda. He placed the tray down. "Thank you," Gowasu said, reaching for the cup. "You know, Zamasu, I have been thinking about what you said. About order, about justice." Zamasu paused. He stood behind his master. His hands were tucked into his sleeves. "And?" Zamasu asked softly. "I think you are right to care," Gowasu said, blowing on the steam. "It shows you have a strong heart, but we must have faith. Goodness takes time to grow. Evil is quick, like a weed, but goodness is a tree. It grows slowly, but its roots are deep." Gowasu took a sip. "This tea, it is excellent today. You have finally found the balance." Zamasu looked at the back of his master's head. He looked at the wrinkled neck. He looked at the white mohawk, so similar to his own. He felt a pang of sadness. He did not hate Gowasu. He loved him in a way. Gowasu was a father to him. But Gowasu was also the problem. He was the embodiment of the divine apathy that allowed mortals to ruin the universe. Gowasu was the lock on the cage, and Zamasu needed to be free. "I have found the balance, master," Zamasu whispered. "But it is not the balance you speak of." Zamasu raised his hand. He did not scream. He did not hesitate. He concentrated his ki into the edge of his palm. It formed a blade of violet light. It hummed quietly, a sound like a high-pitched vibration. "Justice," Zamasu said, "requires action." He brought his hand down. It was a single clean strike, a chop to the neck. Gowasu gasped. The cup slipped from his fingers. It hit the wooden floor. Clatter. The ceramic did not break. It rolled on its side, spilling the amber tea across the polished wood. The liquid spread like a dark stain. Gowasu slumped forward onto the table. He did not suffer. It was instant. The old Kai lay still, his face peaceful, as if he had simply fallen asleep mid-sentence. Silence rushed back into the garden. Zamasu stood over the body. The energy blade faded from his hand. He stared at the spilled tea. He stared at the steam rising from the puddle. He felt nothing. No regret. No joy. Just a profound sense of finality. The obstacle was removed. The path was open. He reached out. His hand did not tremble. He gently removed the Potara earring from Gowasu's left ear. It was yellow, the mark of a supreme Kai. Zamasu took off his own orange earring and placed the yellow one on his ear. He felt a shift in the universe. A connection formed. He was no longer an apprentice. He was the supreme Kai of Universe 10. His life force was now linked to the god of destruction of this universe. He looked at Gowasu's lifeless hand. He slid the silver time ring off the old master's finger. He placed it on his own. It was cold. It was heavy. It fit perfectly. "Rest now, Gowasu," Zamasu whispered. "You have watched enough. I will take the burden from here." He turned away. He did not look back at the body. He stepped off the veranda and into the sky. The next phase required speed. He had to act before the angels noticed, before Beerus noticed. He used the Kai ability, instantaneous movement. He teleported to the void between Universe 6 and 7. He had gathered the Super Dragon Balls. It had taken time, slipping through the shadows, collecting them one by one while the gods were distracted. Now, they floated in the neutral space, massive beyond comprehension. They were the size of planets. 7 amber orbs, glowing with an internal fire, edged with red stars. They dwarfed him. He floated in front of them, a speck of dust before the majesty of creation. "Come forth, dragon of the gods," Zamasu shouted into the vacuum, "and grant my wish." The response was not a sound, but a vibration that shook the fabric of reality. The balls glowed blindingly bright. A beam of golden light erupted from them, stretching across galaxies. It formed a shape. A dragon. Super Shenron. He was golden. He was infinite. His wings spanned nebulas. His eyes were red suns. He was so large that Zamasu could not see his entire form. He could only see the curvature of his snout. Zamasu floated before the eye of the beast. He was swallowed by the red light. "Speak thy wish," the dragon's voice boomed. It was a language of the gods, archaic and powerful. Zamasu took a deep breath. This was it, the point of no return. He thought of the tea. He thought of the barbarians. He thought of Goku's blue hair. He thought of the sin of mortals. "Dragon!" Zamasu yelled. "Switch my body with the mortal known as Son Goku." The dragon's eye flashed. "Thy wish is granted." There was a flash of white light. The sensation was indescribable. It was not pain. It was a wrenching of the soul. It felt like being pulled through a needle's eye. Zamasu felt his consciousness detached from his divine body. He felt himself drifting in a void of pure energy. And then he slammed into something solid. Zamasu gasped, his eyes snapped open. He was not in space. He was in a field. The smell of turned earth and fertilizer filled his nose. The sun was hot, hotter than the sun of the Kai world. He looked down. He was wearing a G, orange and blue. He looked at his hands. They were tan, calloused, large. They were the hands of a farmer, the hands of a fighter. He flexed his fingers. He felt the skin stretch. It felt thick, heavy, itched, He reached up and touched his face. His hair was spiky. He had done it. He was inside the mortal. He looked up. Standing in front of him, looking confused and horrified, was a green-skinned Kai. It was his old body. And inside that body was the soul of Son Goku. Zamasu? The figure asked, using Goku's voice coming from Zamasu's throat. What? What did you do? Why do I look like you? Goku, trapped in Zamasu's body, looked down at his green hands. He looked at the hoe he had been holding, which had fallen to the dirt. Zamasu, now in Goku's body, smiled. It was a smile that did not belong on Goku's face. It was cruel. It was cold. I have claimed what is mine, Zamasu said. His voice was Goku's, but the cadence was divine. I have united the ultimate power with the ultimate soul. He clenched his fist. He felt the ki rising within him. It was immense. It was wild. But under his control, it began to darken. The familiar yellow aura of the Saiyan flickered, then turned black. A dark violet core surrounded by a black void. This body, Zamasu whispered, looking at the dark aura. It longs for battle. It longs for destruction. It is perfect. Give it back! Goku yelled, charging forward in Zamasu's body. But Zamasu's body was weak compared to a Saiyan's. Goku moved sluggishly. He swung a fist, but it was slow. Zamasu caught it effortlessly. You are a guest in that vessel, Zamasu sneered, and guests should be polite. He ignited an energy blade from his hand. But this time, the blade was not purple. It was black. A jagged rift in reality. He drove the blade through the chest of his old body. Goku gasped. He looked down at the energy piercing him. He coughed blood. Behind him in the farmhouse, Chi-Chi and Goten ran out, screaming. They saw their father. Killing a Kai? They were confused. Goku! What are you doing? Chi-Chi screamed. Zamasu looked at them. He felt a twinge of the body's memories, Goku's love for his family. But Zamasu crushed it. He suffocated the affection under layers of his own justice. I am not Goku, Zamasu said. I am Zamasu. He swept his hand. A wave of black energy engulfed the house, engulfed the woman, engulfed the child. Silence fell over the farm. Zamasu stood alone in the field. He was breathing hard. The mortal body was reacting to the adrenaline. His heart was pounding, a mortal heart, beating a frantic rhythm. Thump, 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 thump. He placed a hand over his chest. He felt the power coursing through his veins. It was intoxicating. He felt invincible. He looked at the time ring on his finger. It had transferred with him. He was now a paradox, a god in a mortal shell, a being outside of time. This is the beginning, he said to the wind. The Zero Mortals plan starts now. He twisted the ring. The world dissolved around him. He was traveling through time. He was going to the future. to a timeline where the god of destruction was dead, to a timeline where he could work without interference. He was going to find himself. The transition was nauseating. Colors swirled, ages passed in seconds. He arrived in a ruined city. The sky was dark. The buildings were crumbling skeletons of concrete. It was the world of future trunks. He landed on a piece of rubble. He looked around at the desolation. It was beautiful. It was quiet. It was nearly cleansed. He sensed a key signature approaching. It was the Zamasu of this timeline, the Zamasu, who had not yet made his wish, who was still serving tea to Gowasu. The future Zamasu landed on the rubble. He looked at the stranger wearing Goku's face. He summoned his energy blade, suspicious. "Who are you?" future Zamasu demanded. "You are a mortal, yet you wear the earring of a Kai and the ring of time." The stranger smiled. He touched his chest. "I am you," he said. "I am the future you dreamed of. I am the justice you craved." He walked forward. The dark aura flared around him, turning the sky black. "I have claimed the body of the strongest mortal, and together we will cleanse this universe. We will build a utopia upon the ashes of these sinners." Future Zamasu lowered his blade. He looked into the eyes of the stranger. He saw his own madness reflected there. He saw his own desire. "A utopia," future Zamasu whispered. "Yes," the stranger said. "But first, we need a name. I am no longer just Zamasu, and I am certainly not Son Goku." He looked at his hands, encased in the black aura. "I am the darkness that defines the light. I am the punishment of the gods." He looked up at the ruined sky, his eyes flashing with a pink, malevolent light. "Call me Goku Black." The partnership began with a wish. Goku Black, the god in the stolen body, stood alongside his future self, the Zamasu of this timeline. They stood in the void between universes, beneath the colossal gaze of Super Shenron. They had gathered the planet-sized orbs again. It had been easy. With the power of Goku and the knowledge of the Kais, there was no one to stop them. "Grant my wish," future Zamasu spoke, his voice echoing in the vacuum. "Make this body eternal. Make it indestructible. I desire immortality." The dragon's eyes flashed red. The wish was granted. Future Zamasu looked at his hands. They looked the same. Green skin, slender fingers, but they felt different. They felt fixed. He was no longer a being that flowed with time. He was a stone in the river. He could not be eroded. He could not be broken. Black watched him with a smile. It was a mirror image of narcissism. One possessed the ultimate offensive power, the ever-growing strength of the Saiyan. The other possessed the ultimate defense, an immortal body that could never perish. "The blade and the shield," Black whispered. "We are complete." They destroyed the Super Dragon Balls. They reduced the ancient wish-granting planets to dust. There would be no undoing this. There would be no hope for the mortals to wish them away. Then they began their work. They did not start with a shout. They started with a whisper. They traveled from universe to universe, using the time ring and the Kai teleportation. They visited the sacred worlds of the Kais in all 12 universes. They found the supreme Kais, the creators who were bound by life link to the gods of destruction. It was a surgical removal. Black would appear, the dark aura flaring, and before the gentle Kais could understand what was happening, the blade of energy would fall. With every supreme Kai that fell, a god of destruction died in their sleep. Berus, Champa, all of them, gone. The angels, bound by cosmic law, simply ceased to function. They entered a dormant state waiting for masters who would never return. The universe became quiet. The gods were dead. The oversight was gone. The garden was unguarded. Zamasu and Black stood alone at the peak of creation. They looked down at the multiverse, at the teeming billions of mortals living their chaotic, messy lives. "It is time," Black said. "The Zero Mortals plan." They chose Earth as their stage. The Earth of Trunks' timeline. A world that had already suffered so much. A world that had barely survived the androids. It was fitting. It was poetic. They descended from the sky. Imagine the atmosphere of that future Earth. The air was thick with humidity and dust. The cities were already scarred, but people were rebuilding. There was a fragile sense of hope. Trunks had defeated the androids. Bulma was working in her lab. Children were playing in the streets again. Then the clouds turned black. It wasn't a storm. It was a presence, a pressure that dropped the temperature by 20 degrees in an instant. Black floated above West City. He looked down at the tiny figures scurrying below. He felt the body of Goku reacting. The heart rate increased. The adrenaline spiked. "This body," Black murmured, clenching his hand. "It remembers the excitement of battle. It craves it. How vulgar, and yet how useful." He raised a hand. He did not fire a massive beam. He fired a barrage of small, yellow energy blasts. They fell like rain. They hit the buildings. They hit the streets. They hit the parks. There were no explosions of massive scale, just silence, followed by the crumbling of concrete, the tearing of steel. Trunks sensed it immediately. He was sitting with his mother, Bulma, discussing the fuel for the time machine. He felt the key. It felt like Goku? "No," Trunks whispered, standing up, knocking his chair over. "It can't be. Goku is dead in this timeline." He ran outside. He saw the city burning. He saw the figure in the black G floating in the smoke, backlit by the fires. "Goku!" Trunks called out, confused. Black looked down. He saw the lavender-haired half Saiyan. He smiled. "Trunks," Black said. The voice was Goku's, but the tone was Zamasu's. It was overlapping, a distorted harmonic. "You act as the prologue to my justice." The struggle that followed was not a battle. It was a hunt. For 1 year, Black and Zamasu tormented the Earth. They did not destroy the planet instantly. That would be too easy. That would not be justice. That would be erasure. They wanted the mortals to understand. They wanted them to feel the weight of their sins. They lived in a cabin in the mountains. It was a rustic, wooden structure, untouched by the devastation below. It sat near a lake that reflected the gray sky. Every morning, Black and Zamasu would sit on the porch. They would drink tea. "The tea is excellent today," future Zamasu would say, sipping from a delicate cup. "The water from these mountains is pure. It is the only pure thing left on this world," Black replied, looking at his own reflection in the dark liquid. He was changing. As he spent more time in Goku's body, he was beginning to understand it. He was learning to synchronize his divine soul with the Saiyan cells. He found that when he fought, when he took damage, the body adapted. It grew stronger. The pain was not a deterrent. It was a catalyst. "It is a magnificent design," Black mused, looking at his hand. "The Saiyans, they turn suffering into strength. Every time Trunks strikes me, every time I bleed, I ascend." "You are becoming addicted to the mortal vessel," Zamasu warned gently. "No," Black corrected. "I am mastering it. I am making it divine." Down in the ruins, life was a nightmare. The survivors lived in the subway tunnels. The air smelled of damp concrete, rust, and unwashed bodies. They spoke in whispers. They ate canned food that had expired years ago. Trunks was their leader. He was tired. His jacket was torn. His sword was chipped. He had fought Black a dozen times, and every time he had barely escaped. He sat by a fire made of old furniture, looking at Mai. She was cleaning her shotgun. She looked exhausted, dirt smudging her cheeks. "We can't keep doing this," Mai whispered. "He's getting stronger. Every time you fight him, he learns." "I know," Trunks said. He stared into the flames. "But we have to survive. We have to find a way to use the time machine. We have to get help." The tragedy of Trunks was his memory. He remembered a time of peace. He remembered Gohan. He remembered his mother's smile. Now, his mother was gone. It had happened weeks ago. They were running to the time machine. Black had found them. He had descended like a hawk. Bulma had shoved the fuel canister into Trunks' hands. "Go!" she had screamed. "You are the hope!" Black had grabbed her. He had looked at Trunks with those cold, unfeeling eyes. And in a flash of energy, the brilliant scientist, the woman who had held the future together with nothing but her intellect, was gone, vaporized. Trunks hadn't been able to save her. He had only been able to run. The guilt weighed on him heavier than gravity. He felt he was failing everyone. "I will go back," Trunks said to the fire. "I will go back to the past. I will find Goku and Father. They will know what to do." But getting to the time machine was the struggle. Black knew they were trying. He enjoyed the game. He would watch from the sky, sensing their energy moving through the tunnels. "They scurry like rats," Black noted, hovering over the ruins of a skyscraper. "Let them run," Zamasu said, floating beside him. "It gives the cleansing flavor. Despair is the seasoning of justice." The encounters became ritualistic. Trunks would emerge from the rubble, turning Super Saiyan. His golden aura would light up the gray streets. He would charge Black. Black would not transform. He stayed in his base form. He fought with a fluid, eerie grace. He blocked Trunks' sword with his bare hand. He weaved through the energy blasts. "Is that all, Saiyan?" Black would taunt. "Is this the power of a mortal?" He would kick Trunks through a building. He would blast him into the ground. But he never killed him. Not yet. Black was experimenting. He let Trunks hurt him. He let Trunks cut him. He felt the pain. He felt the burning sensation of the wound. Yes, Black thought, closing his eyes in the middle of the fight. This is it. This is the weakness of the mortal body, and by accepting it, I transcend it. A dark, violet aura began to bleed out of him. It wasn't the blue of Goku, nor the gold of Trunks. It was something else. Something born of a corrupted divinity. "Thank you, Trunks," Black whispered, grabbing the boy by the throat. "You are helping me reach the pinnacle." He would throw Trunks aside, leaving him broken but alive, and fly back to the cabin for tea. It was a slow, suffocating torture. The world was being strangled day by day. The struggle was not just physical, it was philosophical. One evening, Zamasu and Black stood on a cliff overlooking the ruins of a city. The wind howled through the empty windows of the skyscrapers. It sounded like a mournful flute. "Look at it," Black said. "It is quiet." "It is beautiful," Zamasu agreed. "Mortals believe they have a right to exist," Black said. "They believe their chaotic lives have meaning. They build, they destroy, they reproduce, they create noise." He extended his hand toward the ruins. "But look at what we have achieved. We have returned the world to nature. The air is clearing. The plants are taking back the stone. Without mortals, the universe breathes." "They call us evil," Zamasu noted. "Of course they do," Black laughed softly. "Evil is a word the weak use to describe the strong. They cannot comprehend our vision. We are looking at the tapestry of the multiverse from above. We see the stains. They only see the thread they are holding." Black looked at his hand. He clenched it. The black aura flared, and for a moment, a tinge of pink appeared at the edges. "I am becoming something new," Black said. "I can feel it. The Saiyan cells are vibrating. They are singing." "A transformation?" Zamasu asked. "A revelation," Black corrected. "When I fully understand this body, I will show them the true form of a god." Back in the tunnels, Trunks finally made his move. It was a desperate, rainy night. The fuel was ready, only enough for a one-way trip. He ran. He ran through the shattered streets, the canister clutched to his chest. Mai ran behind him, providing cover fire with her shotgun against the energy blasts raining from the sky. Black descended. "Going somewhere?" Trunks screamed, flaring his energy to its maximum. He fired a Masenko, a blinding beam of yellow light. It was a distraction. While Black swatted the beam away, Trunks reached the time machine. He threw Mai inside, but she pushed him back. "You go," she yelled. "You have to bring them back. I'll hold them off." Trunks looked at her. The pain of leaving her was sharper than any sword. but he knew she was right. He jumped into the machine. The canopy closed. Black realized what was happening. He charged a massive sphere of black energy. "I think not." He threw it. The sphere rushed toward the machine. Trunks hit the switch. The machine hummed. Gravity warped. Blue light engulfed him. Just as the black sphere hit the ground, the time machine vanished. Black stared at the empty space. The explosion rocked the city, destroying the landing pad, destroying the surrounding buildings. Smoke cleared. Trunks was gone. Black floated there, the rain hissing against his energy shield. He was not angry. He was intrigued. He traveled through time, Black said. A mortal sin. Zamasu descended beside him. He has gone to the past. He will bring Goku. He will bring Vegeta. Black smiled. A wide, terrifying smile that stretched the skin of Goku's face. Good, Black said. Let them come. I have learned all I can from Trunks. I need a better teacher. Who better to help me master this body than the original owner? He looked at the time ring on his finger. It was reacting to the distortion Trunks had created. It was creating a path. I can follow him, Black realized. For a short time, he looked at Zamasu. Prepare the tea, brother. When I return, I will have tested the limits of this vessel against the gods themselves. The struggle was over for the moment. The stage was set for the war. Trunks had escaped, but he had opened the door. The nightmare was no longer contained in the future. It was bleeding into the past. As the rain fell on the ruined city, washing the dust from the empty streets, Black stood alone, looking up at the grey clouds. He felt the darkness inside him churning, ripening, ready to bloom into a flower of rose-colored light. He closed his eyes and listened to the silence he had created. It was the only music he needed. Goku Black stood alone in the wasteland. He had returned from his brief journey to the past. The time ring had pulled him back, dragging him through the temporal rift like a fish on a line. But the trip had been fruitful. He had fought the Son Goku of the past. He had felt the raw, unrefined power of the Saiyan in his prime. He had let Goku strike him. He had let the pain imprint itself onto his cells. He clenched his hand. The memory of the fight burned in his muscles. I understand it now, Black whispered to the grey sky. This body, it is a bottomless well. The more it is damaged, the deeper the water becomes. He felt the divine soul of Zamasu digging its roots deeper into the Saiyan flesh. It was no longer a possession. It was a marriage. The anger of the god was fueling the biology of the warrior. Suddenly the sky tore open. A temporal distortion appeared above the ruins. The time machine. It descended through the clouds, blue lightning arcing around its landing struts. They had returned. Goku, Vegeta, and Trunks stepped out. They looked determined. They radiated a fierce golden heat. Black watched them from a high precipice. He smiled. It was a gentle smile, almost welcoming. "Welcome back," Black said softly. "You have come to witness the dawn." Vegeta stepped forward first. The Prince of Saiyans. He was angry. He had seen what Black had done to his son's world. He transformed immediately into Super Saiyan Blue. His aura was a roaring flame of Saiyan light. "I will bury you!" Vegeta shouted. He charged. The fight that followed was a dance of contrasts. Vegeta was fury. He struck with rapid, heavy blows. He pummeled Black into the ground. He was faster, stronger than before. Black took the hits. He felt his ribs crack. He felt his lip split. He tasted the copper of his own blood. But he did not panic. He laughed. He lay in the crater Vegeta had made, looking up at the smoke. The pain was exquisite. It was the chisel carving the marble. "Yes," Black whispered. "More. Make me perfect." He stood up. The wounds began to close, not from healing, but from sheer will. The energy inside him was boiling over. It was changing color. He looked at Vegeta, who was panting, confused by Black's resilience. "You are strong, Vegeta," Black said, dusting off his guy. "But you are mortal. You only use the power granted to you. I make the power my own." Black closed his eyes. He reached into the deepest part of his soul. He found the darkness there. He found the divine light. And he crushed them together. "Watch," Black said. He flared his ki. It wasn't yellow. It wasn't blue. A pillar of energy erupted from him. It was pink. A deep, rich, violent magenta. It spiraled around him like the petals of a dark rose opening in the night. The inner core was violet, dark as wine. The outer edges were white, sharp as a blade. The pressure was immense. It didn't feel like a storm. It felt like a vacuum. It sucked the sound out of the air. The light cleared. Black stood there. His hair had turned a pale pastel pink. His eyes were gray-silver. His aura flowed around him like liquid silk. "What is this?" Vegeta whispered, stepping back. "I have reached a height you cannot comprehend," Black explained, his voice echoing with a strange harmonic. "When a mortal surpasses the limit, it is blue. But when a god surpasses the limit, it is the color of a rose. Super Saiyan Rosé." He moved. He didn't run. He glided. He appeared in front of Vegeta. He formed a blade of energy, a scimitar of pink light. He thrust it forward. It went through Vegeta's chest. It wasn't a brutal stab. It was elegant, precise. Vegeta gasped, his eyes going wide. He fell to his knees, the blue aura fading, leaving him cold on the wet ground. Goku screamed. He charged. But the fight had changed. Black was no longer experimenting. He was dominating. He moved with a rhythm that Goku couldn't match. Every strike was a poem of pain. And then the sky brightened. A second figure descended. Future Zamasu, the immortal. He landed beside Black. They stood shoulder to shoulder. The mortal body with the divine soul and the divine body with the immortal heart. "You kept them waiting," Zamasu said. "I was blooming," Black replied. They looked at Goku and Trunks. It was hopeless. The heroes were fighting a two-front war against enemies that could not be stopped. If they hit Black, he got stronger. If they hit Zamasu, he simply healed. It was a cycle of despair. Goku and Trunks fought bravely. They used every technique. They used the solar flare. They used the garlic gun. They even tried the Mafuba, the evil containment wave, to trap Zamasu in a jar. It almost worked. Zamasu felt the pull of the vortex. He felt the fear of confinement. For a brief second, the immortal god knew terror. But the seal was forgotten. The jar was not closed. Zamasu escaped. He floated in the air, panting, his perfect composure shattered. He looked at the jar. He looked at the mortals who had almost imprisoned a god. His face twisted. The calm mask fell away. They are dangerous, Zamasu hissed. They are insects that have learned to bite. We cannot play anymore. Black floated up to meet him. Are you afraid, brother? I am insulted, Zamasu corrected. Their very existence is an error. We must correct it, once and for all. Then let us become one, Black said. Let us show them the true shape of justice. They looked at each other. They nodded. Zamasu reached up to his left ear. He removed his Potara earring. Black reached up to his right ear. My body, Black said. And your immortality. My soul, Zamasu said. And your power. They moved the earrings to opposite ears. The connection was instant, a magnetic pull that defied physics. Their bodies were dragged toward each other. They collided in a flash of blinding white light. The light expanded. It covered the ruined city. It covered the planet. It was a holy light, pure and terrifying. From the center of the light, a voice spoke. It was two voices overlaid, creating a deity's resonance. My form is justice. My form is the world. Revere me. Praise me. The light faded. Floating in the sky was merged Zamasu. He was breathtaking. He wore the Kai robes, black and gray with red trim. His hair was a plume of white, defying gravity like a halo. His skin was green, his eyes silver. Behind him, a ring of light appeared, a literal halo of white energy, floating vertically behind his back. It hummed with the power of 1,000 suns. He did not look like a monster. He looked like a savior. He looked like the answer to a prayer that no one had asked for. Goku and Vegeta, battered on the ground below, looked up. They felt the pressure. It wasn't just ki. It was the weight of the universe pressing down on them. This energy, Goku whispered, it's huge. It's infinite. Merged Zamasu raised his hand. He didn't fire a beam. He summoned the blades of judgment. Hundreds of red arrows of light materialized in the sky behind him. This is the logic of the gods, Zamasu intoned. Mortals are the mistake. I am the correction. He dropped his hand. The red rain fell. The earth exploded. The ruins were pulverized into dust. Goku and Vegeta were buried under the onslaught. Zamasu floated above the destruction. He began to cry. Tears streamed down his face. He was overwhelmed by his own magnificence. He believed with every fiber of his fused being that he was doing the right thing. He was saving the universe from the chaos of free will. "Look at this world," he wept. "It is becoming clean." But the mortals were stubborn. They refused to be cleaned. From the dust, a blue light emerged. Goku and Vegeta. They had not given up. They had one card left to play. "We have to do it, Vegeta," Goku said, holding out a pair of Potara earrings they had received from the Supreme Kai of their timeline. "I hate this," Vegeta spat. "I hate merging with you." "We don't have a choice." Vegeta gritted his teeth. "Give it to me." They put on the earrings. Another flash of light. Another collision of souls. Vegito Blue appeared. The ultimate mortal fusion against the ultimate divine fusion. Vegito did not speechify. He did not cry. He crossed his arms and smirked. "All right," Vegito said. "Let's finish this." The battle that ensued shattered the reality of the future timeline. They moved so fast that time seemed to skip. They were flashes of blue and white light colliding in the air, creating shockwaves that cleared the clouds for the first time in years. Zamasu was stronger in raw power, but Vegito was skilled. Vegito was the perfect warrior. He punched Zamasu in the face. Zamasu reeled back. He touched his cheek. He looked at the blue blood on his fingers. "Why?" Zamasu screamed. "Why do you resist? Why do you not accept your judgment?" "Because we're alive!" Vegito shouted, driving a spirit sword into Zamasu's chest. "And we decide our own future." Zamasu stared at the sword piercing his immortal body. He felt the pain, but then he felt something else. His body began to ripple. The right side of his face, the purple mortal side, began to swell. It turned purple. It became goopy, unstable. The fusion was flawed. Zamasu was immortal. Goku Black was mortal. The body was fighting itself. The mortal flesh was rotting, unable to contain the infinite soul, while the immortal flesh tried to heal it. He became a monster. Two halves of a face, one beautiful and serene, one melted and grotesque. "Look at me!" Zamasu screamed, his voice cracking. "I am the world! I am the universe!" He grew larger. He sacrificed his speed for size. He became a giant, a grotesque avatar of his own ego. Vegito's time ran out. The fusion split. Goku and Vegeta fell to the ground, exhausted. Zamasu loomed over them. He raised a massive, mutated arm. He was going to crush them. He was going to end it. But he had forgotten one variable: Trunks. Trunks stood on a pile of rubble. He held his broken sword hilt. He was crying. He was angry. He was tired of gods and monsters destroying his home. "I won't let you," Trunks whispered. He felt the energy of the earth, not a spirit bomb, but something more intimate. The hope of the survivors, the few people left in the subway tunnels, the plants, the water. Blue light gathered around Trunks. It formed a blade of light where his sword used to be. "This is everyone's power!" Trunks yelled. He flew up. Zamasu looked down. He saw the tiny speck of light coming toward him. He laughed. "A mortal? Defying a god?" He swung his massive fist. Trunks dodged. He slashed. The sword of light cut through Zamasu's arm. Zamasu stared at the severed limb. He couldn't believe it. "Impossible!" Trunks didn't stop. He flew higher. He drove the sword deep into Zamasu's chest, right where the two bodies had fused. "This is for the future," Trunks screamed. He pulled the sword up. A line of light appeared up the center of Zamasu's body, from his groin to his head. Zamasu's eyes went wide. He looked at the world one last time. He saw the ruins. He saw the mortals. He saw the imperfection he had failed to erase. Zamasu whispered, "I just wanted..." The light split him in two. The massive body disintegrated. It turned into particles of light. The gold and the purple dissolved into the wind. Silence returned to the battlefield. Trunks landed. His sword faded. He fell to his knees. Goku and Vegeta looked at the empty sky. It was over. The monster was gone. The nightmare had ended, or so they thought. The air began to turn cold. The wind stopped. The particles of Zamasu did not vanish. They floated. They drifted up into the atmosphere. They began to merge with the sky. A face appeared in the clouds, a laughing green face, then another, then 1,000. The sky turned green. The clouds became Zamasu. "I am the universe," the sky whispered. He had cast aside his physical body. He had become an abstract concept. He was becoming the law of the cosmos itself. Red beams of light rained down from the faces in the sky. They hit the survivors. They hit the subway tunnels. The few humans left vanished. Their energies winked out. Goku looked up at the laughing sky. He realized the horror. They hadn't won. They had just released the virus from its container. Zamasu had won. The Zero Mortals plan was complete. There were no mortals left on Earth. Only the 3 Saiyans standing in the mud. He's everywhere," Goku whispered. "We can't hit him. He's the sky." Despair settled in. It was a cold, heavy blanket. There was no fighting the atmosphere. There was no punching a concept. But Goku remembered something. A small button in his pocket. A button given to him by a friend in another timeline. The Omni King, Zeno. "Maybe," Goku said, pulling the button out. It was small, blue and purple. "Maybe this will work." He pressed it. In a flash of light, a small, childlike being appeared. He had a football-shaped head and a blank expression. Zeno looked around at the ruined world. He looked at the green sky filled with laughing faces. "This place is messy," Zeno said. "Who did this?" "That guy up there," Goku pointed at the sky. Zeno looked up. He frowned. I don't like it. It's annoying. Zeno raised his small hands. A white light began to gather in his palms. I'm going to erase it, Zeno said cheerfully. All of it. Everyone run, Goku shouted. Get to the time machine. They scrambled. They grabbed the machine. They threw themselves inside. Zeno closed his hands. The world turned white. There was no sound of destruction. There was no explosion, just the cessation of existence, the buildings, the ground, the sky, Zamasu, the earth, the solar system, the universe. It was all wiped away, like a drawing on a whiteboard being cleaned by a giant eraser. The time machine vanished into the time stream, just as the white void consumed everything. Zamasu was gone. But so was the future. The struggle had ended in absolute zero. The time machine materialized with a heavy thud on the grass. It smoked, the metal cooling, ticking as it contracted. The blue lightning of time travel dissipated into the afternoon air. The canopy opened. Goku, Vegeta, Trunks and Mai climbed out. They fell onto the green grass. They were alive. The air here smelled of cut grass and oil. It smelled of life. The sky was a brilliant, unblemished blue. There were no faces in the clouds. There was no green mist. There was just the sun, warm and indifferent. Trunks lay on his back, staring up at the sky. His chest heaved. He was covered in dust and dried blood, but the pain seemed distant now. He had survived, but at what cost? He closed his eyes. In the darkness behind his eyelids, he saw the white void. He saw his world, the cities, the memories, the people he had sworn to protect, wiped away in an instant. Zamasu was gone, the Zero Mortals plan had failed, but in a way, Zamasu had achieved his goal. That specific future was empty. It was clean. It was gone. It's over, Trunks whispered, the words tasting like ash. Beerus and Whis stood nearby, watching the weary warriors. The god of destruction looked at the battered group with a mixture of annoyance and relief. You pushed your luck, Beerus muttered. Playing with time, playing with Zeno. You're lucky you exist at all. But Trunks didn't hear him. He was mourning. He was grieving for a mother who didn't exist anymore, for a mentor who was gone, for a world that was now just a memory in his own mind. He felt Mai's hand on his arm. She was sitting next to him, her shotgun lying in the grass. She looked tired, her eyes red-rimmed. We're here, she said softly. We're okay. Trunks looked at her. She was the only piece of his world that remained. Two survivors on a life raft, washed up on the shores of the past. The days that followed were a blur of recovery. Bulma, the Bulma of the present, tended to them. She fed them. She fixed their clothes. She fixed the time machine, her hands moving with the same dexterity, the same love as the mother Trunks had lost. Watching her was painful for Trunks. It was like seeing a ghost, but it was also healing. It was proof that life persisted, that somewhere In some timeline, his mother was still laughing, still inventing, still yelling at Vegeta. Goku, ever the restless spirit, had one loose end to tie up. He returned to the future one last time. Not to fight, but to retrieve. He took the time machine back to the white void. There was nothing there. No stars, no gravity, just an endless expanse of nothingness. Floating in the void was the future Xeno, the childlike ruler of everything, drifting in the empty space he had created. "Hello?" Goku called out. "Hello!" Xeno chirped back, happy to see a face. Goku brought him back to the present. He introduced the future Xeno to the present Xeno. The two small gods became instant friends, playing games in their palace beyond the stars. The void was closed. The timeline was sealed. The empty page was left unturned. But for Trunks, the question remained. Where do I go? He could not stay in the present. This was not his time. He was a paradox here, a shadow of a future that had been rewritten. Whis offered a solution. They stood on the balcony of Capsule Corp. The evening breeze was cool. The city lights of West City were flickering on, a sea of amber and white. "I can send you back," Whis said, tapping his staff gently on the tiles. "Not to your future, that is gone, but to a time before Zamasu enacted his plan, to a parallel timeline." Trunks looked at the angel. "A parallel timeline?" "Yes," Whis explained. "There will already be a Trunks there, and a Mai. You will be doubles. But your mother will be alive. The world will be intact. Zamasu will be stopped before he can destroy everything." It was a compromise. It wasn't his home. It was a copy of his home. But it was a world where the people he loved were still breathing. Trunks looked at Mai. She nodded. "We'll take it," Trunks said. "As long as there is life, there is hope." The morning of their departure was bright. The time machine was fueled and ready. The Z fighters gathered to say goodbye. Goku, Vegeta, Bulma, Piccolo. They stood in a semicircle, a family forged in battle. Vegeta walked up to his son. He didn't hug him. He didn't give a speech. He simply pulled back his fist and punched toward Trunks' face. Trunks didn't flinch. He caught the fist. They stood there for a moment, father and son, connected by the force of the block. Vegeta smirked. It was a proud, arrogant smirk. "Take care of yourself," Vegeta grunted. "I will, father," Trunks smiled. Goku waved. "Come back and visit. We'll spar again." Trunks and Mai climbed into the machine. The engine hummed to life, a familiar, comforting vibration. But just as the machine began to lift off, Trunks saw something. Flying toward them, fast and erratic, was a figure. It was Gohan. But it wasn't the warrior Gohan. It wasn't the ultimate Gohan who fought Buu. It was the scholar Gohan. He was wearing his glasses, his dress shirt unbuttoned at the collar, sweating from the flight. He was joined by Piccolo. "Trunks!" Gohan shouted, waving his arm. "Good luck." Trunks looked at Gohan through the glass of the canopy. In his own timeline, Gohan was his master. Gohan was the scarred warrior with one arm who had died in a puddle of rain fighting the androids. Gohan was the tragedy that had defined Trunks' life. But this Gohan was happy. He looked soft. He looked peaceful. He had a family. He had a future. Trunks felt tears prick his eyes. He realized then that he hadn't failed. He had fought to protect the future, yes, but he had also fought to protect this. He had fought so that somewhere in the vast multiverse, Gohan could grow up to be a scholar. So that Gohan could be happy. Seeing Gohan smile, it washed away the pain of the ruins. It washed away the image of the green sky. "Thank you, Gohan," Trunks whispered, placing his hand against the glass. The time machine flared with blue light. It shot up into the sky, disappearing into the currents of time. They were gone. Off to a new world. Off to a second chance. In the 10th universe of the present timeline, the garden was quiet. Gowasu stood on the veranda. He was alive. Thanks to Beerus and Whis, his death had been prevented. Zamasu, the Zamasu of this time, had been erased before he could commit his crimes. Gowasu held the tea tray. He placed it on the table. He was alone now. There was no apprentice to brew the tea. There was no one to lecture about the balance of good and evil. There was only the wind in the sacred trees and the petals falling on the grass. Gowasu sat down. He poured a cup for himself. He looked at the empty seat across from him. He thought of Zamasu. He thought of the student he had loved like a son. He thought of the brilliant mind that had twisted itself into a knot of hatred. "I failed you," Gowasu whispered to the empty air. "I told you to watch, but I did not teach you how to see." He took a sip of the tea. It was bitter. He had brewed it too long. He placed the cup down. Zamasu wanted a perfect world, Gowasu mused. A world without mistakes. A world without tea dregs. He looked out at the garden. It was not perfect. There were weeds growing near the shrine. A branch had fallen from the great tree. But a world without mistakes is a dead world. Gowasu stood up. He walked into the garden. He knelt down and pulled the weed from the soil. He placed it gently to the side. He would find a new apprentice one day. He would teach them better. He would teach them that the beauty of the universe was not in its order, but in its struggle. That the tea leaves must dance in the chaos to create the flavor. He returned to the table. He poured the rest of the tea onto the ground. A libation for a lost soul. "Rest in peace, Zamasu," Gowasu said. "May you find the perfection you sought in the nothingness." The story of Goku Black and Zamasu fades into history. It becomes a legend told among the gods, a cautionary tale of hubris. But on Earth, life continued. The city rebuilt, the scars healed. Pan, Goku's granddaughter, learned to walk. Bulla, Vegeta's daughter, was born. The Z-fighters went back to their lives. They ate, they trained, they argued, they slept. They lived the messy, chaotic, beautiful lives that Zamasu had hated. And in doing so, They proved him wrong every single day. Existence is not a sin. Existence is a gift. And now, you are part of that existence. You have walked through the fire. You have seen the rose-colored light and the white void. You have felt the despair of the future and the relief of the present. The journey is over. The armor can be taken off. The sword can be sheathed. Imagine yourself sitting on the veranda of Gowasu's temple. The air is cool and still. The sky is a gentle, endless yellow. There is a cup of tea in front of you. Steam rises from it in lazy spirals, dissolving into the air. Watch the steam. Watch it curl and fade. It is like your thoughts. They rise, they twist, and they vanish. You are safe here. The gods are watching over the balance. The warriors are resting. The timeline is secure. There is nothing you need to do. There is no world you need to save. Your only task is to rest. Feel the heaviness in your legs, the warmth in your hands, the softness of the bed supporting you. Let the image of the garden fade. Let the yellow sky darken to a comforting twilight, then to a velvet black. The tea ceremony is finished. The temple is silent. Drift away from the story. Drift away from the words. You are floating in your own quiet space. A space of peace. A space of healing. Sleep now. Sleep.